It's the DORK podcast. It's the DORK podcast. Rich Keefe. It's the DORK podcast. Hashtag. It's the hashtag DORK podcast.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Hashtag Dork. My name is Rich Keefe, joined as always by Davey Eyeballs. He is Randy Von Dandy. He is promo code Ron Von D. All hail the king of ginger ale. It's Ryan. Davey, how are you?
Good to be back in the same room again.
Oh my God.
It's nice. It's much nicer.
It's crisp.
I just feel your heat.
I am hot. And you had a hot piece of jerky a minute ago.
Jesus, what was that?
I don't know. Local butcher has hot, crispy, or extra spicy, crisp jerky. It's almost like a potato chip. It's so thin.
Or it's like a well done piece of bacon.
Yes,
is what the consistency was.
It's technically beef jerky.
I come in the Rich Keefe household. I come into the Dragon's Lair. He hits me with do you like spicy stuff?
I want a spicy something.
And I said, depends on how spicy. Like I'm a person. I like spice. I like a little heat, but I don't like it when it overpowers the flavor.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So I bite into this jerky. I'm like, that's not that bad. And all of a sudden,
late heat
in the back parts of my tongue. And then the second bite, I think I got like a pepper or like a peppercorn.
Right.
And it was like, right, you know, like it's like a bomb went off in your face and clears out your nose. Fuck, man. You like.
My wife had no problem. She ate it and she was like, "Oh yeah, it's spicy. You like it?" And I had it and I was like, "Whoa!"
Yeah, but you didn't tell me it was that spicy.
I said it was spicy.
Oh, you did it.
You kind of had to realize it was spicy. If you, the first thing I said to you is, "You like want something spicy?"
You like it? I'm like,
you had it.
I think it was that spicy.
Yeah, it's pretty spicy. Though.
It's pretty spicy.
That's pretty spicy. Do you want more?
Later, yeah.
We'll have more.
Yeah,
we'll bring more down. And we'll have some fun with it. We'll roll around in it. We'll have a good time. Ryan, before we get to the news, Stephen Dorff, who is an actor. He came out with something. Now, to be fair, I didn't read the entire interview or article. The pull quote was he doesn't like Marvel movies. So he's another Martin Scorsese, doesn't like Marvel movies. And he went so far as to say he's embarrassed for Scarlett Johansson for being in Black Widow.
Why?
I don't know. Scarlett Johansson, I think, has done a very nice job in all these Marvel movies. And she's been paid very well.
I'm going to do this. Right. First of all, it's a normie dickhead thing to say.
Dickhead thing.
If you're not in Marvel movies, if you're not one of the cool kids, it's so easy to be like, "Well, those movies are bullshit. I'm an artist." Right.
He's an artist. And he even said, "I'm going to look for the next Stanley Kubrick."
What?
That's what he said.
Who is going to hire this guy? This guy was in a Marvel movie. He was in Blade.
He was in the first Marvel, now not MCU, but he was in the first like real Marvel movie, not like the shit like, you know, Howard the Duck or Captain America, but like the real, what got it all started late 90s was Blade, which was awesome. And
that was great.
Probably his best movie, role.
And then you said via tweet that he was also in Fear.com, which you said
is the answer. Anytime somebody asks me, because it's a very easy question, what's your favorite movie or what's the best movie? But every once in a while, somebody will ask you, what's the worst movie you've ever seen? And I've seen a lot of movies.
Right.
I watch a lot of movies. I've already seen 35 movies that have just come out in this calendar year. So I've seen a shitload of movies. Fear.com starring Stephen Dorff is the worst movie I've ever seen.
And
that's the answer to that
question.
He was
also in a video game movie called Alone in the Dark with Tara Reid and Christian Slater, which was one of the worst reviewed movies ever.
Is that a 0%er?
It's a 1.
It's a
1%er
on Rotten Tomatoes.
To have this guy come out and say, like, he's embarrassed for these people. First of all, buddy, your career got so bad. I'm going to do my wife's hands. She does this when she's very emphatic about stuff. She does this.
You know who you're kind of starting to sound like a little bit? But keep going. No. I'll let me just jump in.
This guy.
Hold on. This is my favorite. Hold on. Her sister was a witch, right? And what was her sister? A princess. The Wicked Witch of the East, bro.
I'm gonna stab him.
You're gonna look at me and you're gonna tell me that I'm wrong? Am I wrong?
It's my favorite
she
movie.
wore a crown and she came down in a bubble,
I'm not fighting with you.
Grow up, bro. Grow up.
Get educated, but
Grow up.
So this is why I hate that. That, for those of you listening at home, really sounds like the hot or cold debate.
It was very similar.
It was very similar to that.
Yeah.
So I have like PTSD from that. But the guy screaming is dead wrong.
He's completely wrong. Oh, yeah. You just do a little bit of research.
He's
so wrong. But I love the passion. But man, is he wrong.
Oh, he's wrong. Anyway, Stephen Dorff's career got so bad, he was hawking e-cigarettes. Remember, he had like blue cigarette commercials. Like,
Yeah.
you're going to see, you're embarrassed for Scarlett Johansson, who can buy and sell you 5 times over.
Oh my God.
Has a wonderful child and a wonderful husband in Colin
Yes.
Jost.
Everything's
And you're
going great.
embarrassed?
Embarrassed for her. She's doing fine.
She's fine.
She's doing fine. Well, because first I was like, is he embarrassed that Black Widow didn't get a movie for so long? Because I like, you read it in pieces. Like, you're like, oh, first of all, Steven Dorff's trending, and like this, that, and the other thing. And my wife actually read it to me. And she's like, oh, he's embarrassed for Scarlett Johansson. I'm like, what? Did he get an advanced copy of Black Widow? Does he already know that it stinks or something? But no, that's not the case.
Because who would send him that?
He's just shitting on Marvel movies, which is hilarious because all these great actors, there is a laundry list of Oscar-winning actors who are in Marvel movies.
Right.
And he's like, oh, I'm going to be the next Kubrick. It's like, no, first of all, you're not. They don't want you to be in that. But that's also somebody who hasn't watched enough Marvel movies. To just say you don't like Marvel movies. So, all right, you didn't like Black Panther. You didn't like Endgame. You didn't like Infinity War. Like, there are some movies, they're all different. Like Winter Soldier is very different than Ant-Man, which is very different than Guardians of the Galaxy. Like, they're not all one thing.
No.
But Steven Dorff, you stupid fuck. I got one last message for you, Steven Dorff. Get the fuck out of here. Pack your bags, bro. By the way, you were decent in
Gate.
No.
The Gate.
No, fucking what's the True Detective season 3? He was actually pretty good. So I'm gonna end with a compliment because I'm in a good mood today.
Because we're doing a compliment sandwich. By the way, having worked in education for 15 years,
yes,
right?
Yeah.
The compliment sandwich. If anyone ever brings up the compliment sandwich, that is a nice way of telling you that you suck at something.
Yeah.
So if anyone's like, look, I really like how you do this. You need to work on this, but you're okay at this. You suck.
Yeah.
That is what you take away from that.
They want to criticize you.
You admitted yourself that you suck.
You suck. You have to marry your mother-in-law as well. That's something that we're going to get into right now.
This week in Dork.
Well, Ryan, perfect segue, as I Think You Should Leave Season 2 comes out at 3 a.m. It is a July 6th release, and I assume, like all Netflix shows, it's like a 3 a.m. Eastern time debut.
Midnight.
It'll be midnight Pacific time.
Specific time.
I couldn't be more excited for anything ever. I am so, like, I've tried not to think about it because I know I'm just gonna like combust. I cannot wait for this. I don't even know what my plan is. Like, I'm working tomorrow. I was off today, so I'm going to work tomorrow. So I assume as soon as I get home, might be my first watch through, and then I'll watch it maybe tomorrow night again,
and then I'll watch it a dozen more times, and then I'll call people and be like, "Have you seen it?" And then I'll call them to come over and have them watch it with me.
Are you excited
so I can
for it?
stare? Am I excited for it?
Are you?
Yes.
I kind of call bullshit on that because when we did our preview for the upcoming year, I said scale of 1 to 6. How excited are you for? I think.
Are you gonna fucking? You're gonna?
And you said 4.5.
The bones are their money, so are the worms. They pull your hair up, but not out to turn it to a man and have another chance at life. But if they pull it out, they turn to bones.
Now, I don't remember exactly why I gave it a 4.5.
It might have even been a 4. It was low. I was flabbergasted, and I don't often get flabbergasted.
And I think the issue for me is the looming sophomore slump.
Possible, I suppose.
I think hope to God that doesn't happen.
So you remember his episode of whatever that show was called? The Comedians?
Yeah.
That he got like one crack at? The Pointer Brothers. Oh, fuck. Where would that have ranked in the sketches?
So, okay, so that would make an even 30 sketches.
Yeah, right.
Right. So how I did it, because a friend of the podcast, Jason Rossi, is now compiling. Everyone in the DSG did their rankings of every single.
Sorry, I
saw that. Where did you get that?
I just cracked the screen. So if you're watching on YouTube, we stream these Monday nights on YouTube. So at the end of the year, we're going to give out an award for the Rossi Award, which goes to the worst take of the year.
Yep.
And the winner is going to take home this Jason Rossi WEI producer nameplate, which I took from work after he left and didn't take it.
So it's blank. It's blank on the back. So we should write everyone's name. Oh, we should put it on a trophy.
Yes.
We should put it on a trophy and see if
Worst.
we can get like a shit emoji trophy. There has to be one.
Yeah, Rossi.
And just have that be the plaque and then have names. We got to do it.
I think that's a great idea. By the way, Rossi's favorite sketch on I Think You Should Leave.
I know that. I'm not stupid. I'm smarter than you.
Good one.
Okay, so the Pointer Brothers would make an even 30.
Yes.
As I was saying, Rossi's now compiling everyone at the DSG, rank them. He's doing the math right now. It's a lot of math. So I did it in like the top tier are 10. Like, so I have like different tiers.
Okay. Yeah.
I would put the Pointer Brothers in the mid to high second tier.
I think
Between
Pointer
20
Brothers
and 10.
kills me though. Pointer Brothers would be in the top 10.
So here's a quick story.
Yeah.
So I was the faculty advisor to our spirit club at the school I previously worked at, which is like basically we don't have cheerleaders, but we have a guy, Captain Avon, and he gets a cape. It's like a position that you get voted in. It's a whole thing.
Yeah.
So they do skits every Friday, and they did the Pointer Brothers.
Incredible.
I was dying laughing.
So good.
And because I'm looking around, I have never seen people be more confused.
It's
because
so
they did
good.
the whole thing and they were mic'd up. So they were like, all right, when we point at you, sit down. And people were like, no, like stand up when we point. And they're like, there's no way of telling. Right. And people were so confused. And it was the funniest
Those
thing.
kids obviously have the best sense of humor in the world.
Incredible. So
Hang on to
the
those
guy who was
kids.
always Captain Avon was like basically the funniest kid in the school.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So it was,
that is really good.
it was really funny.
Because that is beyond. I mean, that skit. So it's on Netflix. It was a series called The Comedians, where like a bunch of different people got their own episode, and they just put on sketches like that. And the Tim Robinson one is good, but the only one that's really memorable is Pointer Brothers, and it's just amazing. So it's like three guys up on this thing, like the stage, where you're speaking to like an audience of like all these. I don't know.
It's like a corporate
conference,
Yeah,
so
like
they're all sitting there
entertainment at
like
this
whatever.
conference. Yeah.
And so it's called the Pointer Brothers, and they're all up on stage, and it's a couple guys you would recognize from sketches from I Think You Should Leave. And they're called the Pointer Brothers. They all have like the little mics on. They tell everybody to stand up, and they're like, "We're pointing. You sit down." And they just start pointing. The best line in the whole thing is one of the people that they goes, "Well, this can't be it, can it?" And the other guy was like, "Yeah, I think it is."
But the room's so big that people don't know, and it's three guys just doing this.
And then they get into a huge argument with each
On
other.
stage,
It's so good. But we aren't gonna do an episode until 3 weeks out because we got Black Widow, then Loki, then we will do this. But that means it gives everybody plenty of times to watch it, rewatch it, and then we're gonna do the same thing we did last time and rank every sketch and go through. I don't know how many they're gonna be. I don't know what the time limit is or whatever, but I can't pumped.
I can't wait to watch this so many times. I will watch this until it's funny.
Oh, it'll be funny right away.
I know, but like, you know what I mean? Like sometimes like there were a couple sketches.
mood, though. I don't know how I'm gonna do it because I still remember where I was. Actually, I was sitting in this seat right here the first time I watched Chunky. I almost fell out of my chair, tears in my face, laughing. I couldn't move. I was laughing so hard when I watched Chunky for the first time.
The one so you watched it and told me to watch it, and I was like, fine, whatever. And then the very first was The Magician.
Oh, good one.
Which hand? That one.
Yep.
And when Cecily Strong said, he went up there and jerked you off until nothing came out because you are a boy, Charlie. I died laughing. That was like my favorite line in that sketch.
Good. I do wonder, and just from watching the trailer, I feel like they're going to get more people to do cameos, and I don't know if that's going to be a good thing or a bad thing because he had kind of a small cast, and obviously he had a couple like Will Forte did one, Vanessa Bayer did one, Cecily Strong did one. I'm hoping Sam Richardson does more. His buddy from the Detroiters. I'm hoping
except not the Scrooge thing. That was
no. Forget punt that one. But everything else, I'm hoping he does more of. Speaking of Netflix, they've been doing pretty well recently. They just came out with the first of what will be a trilogy of horror movies based on the R.L. Stine novels, Fear Street, and the one that came out this past week was Fear Street 1994. Ryan, I liked it.
It was pretty good.
I liked it very much.
For R.L. Stine, and to get an R rating is pretty good. I mean, it's for straight up slasher movies. You had Uma Jr.
Yes.
What's a Hawk?
Maya Hawk. Maya Hawk
is the Drew Barrymore in the beginning. That's not a spoiler.
No.
Yeah, it's very great opening.
It's very Scream, Stranger Things, Riverdale. Those were the three things that jumped out to me. Like, if you like any or all of those, you will like this. R.L. Stine, many people refer to him as the Stephen King for kids.
Goosebumps.
So Goosebumps is definitely a more...
And for really young kids, Eureka's Castle on Nickelodeon.
Does he do that
was
too?
R.L. Stine, yeah.
So this is probably the most mature R.L. Stine, but it's not exactly...
No, it's right.
Warm.
It's right in our wheelhouse, man. It is.
Oh, I loved it. But so here's the thing: it's also a shared universe, and you know it's going to be. And every week they're going to release. There's going to be 3 total, and it's 1994, 1978, and then 1666. And they're constantly referencing other things from this town, and it's cool to know that they're going to have 2 more movies. But my one thing, without spoiling any of it, I would recommend people watch it. It's very good. Is the movie that's coming out this Friday? I kind of wish was a different one, if that makes sense to you. Like, if this one was called 1965, I think I would like it more. If you get what I'm picking up.
Yes.
Right? Because like the character from 1978, I'm like, cool, but I
the
like
65 one was better. Yes.
Yeah.
And the premise of I'm not to give anything away, but like it's not what you think it is. So if you think it's like a straight slasher movie, it's kind of not. It has a nice little like.
No, what I would say is watch the first 5 minutes and right away you're going to be like, oh, it's this. Oh no, it's a little bit of this. Like they give you a little bit of a swerve.
If you like 90s music, the first 45 minutes of the movie, they nonstop. It's just
they got a
song
lot
after song after song.
90 song. I saw that you pointed out though on Twitter.
I was pissed.
So that annoys me, and I was doing that mentally in my head because they kept coming out with heater after heater, like big song, like not sneaky songs, all monster hits. And I'm like, all right, were these all 94? And you said
one of the songs Firestarter by Prodigy came out in 96 and the movie's in 94. And the other thing I had an issue with too, at one point early, they're going to like this big football pep rally, right? The football team,
you're right.
The band and the cheerleading squad, one bus.
Seems like you're gonna need
no fucking way. You need 2 buses for a football team.
No, even if you have a small football team,
right?
You need more than one bus.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, that.
And how many people are in band? Like 60?
More than the football team.
Yeah,
chances. The Tomorrow War came out on Amazon Prime this weekend. The Chris Pratt movie.
Yeah,
actually pretty good.
I read the reviews and they were awful.
The reviews stink. I was blown away by how bad the reviews were, and I didn't get into specifics. I just saw like scores.
Yeah.
And they were all really bad. And I'm like, whatever. I'm watching a lot of movies, and these free ones I'll watch. So I went in. Maybe it helped. I went in with really low expectations. Really good.
All right.
If you like sci-fi movies, and I'm going to update my rankings this week. I'm going to put out my rankings of all the movies I've seen this year. The Tomorrow War was better than a lot of things I've seen. I would say.
Okay. My test for action movies that come out at home. So like the movie with Chris Hemsworth. What was that one? It was on Netflix.
Oh, Extraction.
Was it as good as that?
Yep.
Okay. I'll watch it.
Yep. That's actually a good one to point to.
Yeah.
I would say yes, it is. So this week, Black Widow comes out. I'm sure everybody's going to watch it. You can watch it at home on Disney Plus. Is it $30?
Now again, you figure you see this at the movies.
You can go to the theater.
You go to the theater, you spend more.
I know you do. No, I'll probably watch it at home, but $30.
I'm going to watch it at home.
Now, for anybody, I didn't pay for Raya and the Last Dragon.
Yep.
I didn't pay for that. But once I pay for Black Widow, do I have it forever?
Yes.
Oh. All right.
Yep.
So I'm definitely going to do that. So that's our episode on Monday night. So everybody's got the weekend to watch Black Widow. We haven't had an MCU movie to talk about.
Oh, I'm excited.
In a dog's
We're going to have a mid-credit. Yeah. We're going to have another mid-credit. We're going to have an end credit.
Speaking of dog's age, my dog aged 10 years last night during the fireworks. This poor guy.
There was a moment last night where we couldn't find my dog, and he was under like they have an old, where at my mother-in-law's place there's like an old stove. It's for decoration, but it's like an old antique stove.
Was he in it?
Underneath it, like in a corner. Hated it
so bad.
So I mentioned this on Twitter.
Yeah,
I'm gonna call someone, I forget who it was, some jabroni, whoever this cool
so ass
I'm like, hey, just so you know, this is a great for you, like if you're setting fireworks off at like midnight or like 1 o'clock in the morning, not only are you going to scare the shit out of my dog, you're going to wake up my whole house.
Right.
Because the dog's going to start, woo!
He's barking,
he's running around, he's crying.
Shaking. Well, that's not great.
And some jabroni, to use a wrestling term.
Right. Hey, top of the jour.
It's the 4th. Suck it.
Oh, well, to you, I would say,
fuck you, dickhead.
Oh, both of those things. Do it again.
I'm fascinated with the anus.
No, that's not helpful.
That's not
fuck you, dickhead.
My favorite MacGruber thing too, sneaky, is how he gives the finger. It's like that. Like
It's one of
like the
these.
short finger.
MacGruber! He has a drink or two each night, but it doesn't affect his job. MacGruber! The guy's a social drinker. MacGruber!
By the way, sorry to cut you off.
No, I know what you're gonna say.
Can I jump in on this?
Please.
So maybe my favorite interview I've ever done in my entire life was this past week on Gresh and Keefe. We had Chris Jericho on, who, again, wrestling themed. The fucking man. Chris Jericho has had a top 5 wrestling career, and that's not even just because we had him on. Do the math. He has. And he was also...
He did the math.
Yeah, no, he did actually. His latest book, he did every single match he's ever been in. He was in MacGruber, and I asked him if he wanted to be in the MacGruber series. He was like, absolutely, I do. And he said he was joking about it with Yorma and Will Forte not that long ago.
And he actually referred to he knew his character by name. He
Frank
said Frank.
Corver.
He's like, if they want Frank Corver, they got Frank Corver. I remember him saying that. I'm like,
yeah.
And it was
and then
so,
he retweeted the Dork podcast, which it's the fucking little things.
Friend of the podcast, Chris Jericho.
Oh my god, best friend of the podcast.
And I will say too, and not to pump your tires, when I'm sitting right next to you. I would do this when we're not live anyway. You could tell, you can tell he was really into that interview.
Yes,
because he knew that you and Gresh were like fans
wrestling.
and reference things that like no one else would reference. And like,
because I'm like, this guy's done a million interviews and he's probably coming on. He's trying to sell his books. I'm like, how's this gonna go? And he was great. And then we kept him longer. I think we were probably thinking 10, 15 minutes. It went over 20 minutes. And even when we were trying to say goodbye, he was like, I got a question for you guys. And I was like, what the fuck? This is the greatest thing ever.
It was awesome. And you were talking about I remember watching the countdown, when he first came out, and everyone's like, oh,
that was the coolest thing in the world when he debuted in 99.
And Y2J.
Oh, it's awesome.
That was the shit.
It was awesome. But and the fact that he was in MacGruber,
Frank Corver.
Guy's awesome. And it's funny because he's like, I've been in other movies, but he's like, that's the one that people still reference. I'm like,
yeah, because it's fucking awesome.
It's the best. And he had a great line in that too. Remember, he was like working out and he said something. He's like, I like when you say that. He's like, and that's why I say that. Like he and Will Forte have this great back and forth when he's like putting the team together.
Yeah.
Like the other guys don't really have lines, but they gave Jericho a couple of lines. But oh my God, that was so much fun. But anyway, going back to this dickhead who likes fucking fireworks.
So I ask you, and you ask the question. Can you ask the question you asked me?
Yeah.
As a grown man,
what's your favorite part? The colors or the noise in the sky?
What do you like?
What do you like most?
You like
when it goes pop or when it's red?
Or when it goes you like that?
You like it when it turns to green?
You like that? You
grow up.
Stink.
Grow up.
Grow up, bro.
Fucking grow up, bro.
Oh
God,
get
fireworks.
educated. You stink. By the way,
you know what you should do actually with the fireworks? Try light one, sit on top of it, have it go directly up your asshole.
That's right.
That's what I would do next.
Or you can go the Jason Pierre-Paul route.
Blow your fucking hand off.
Hold on to it. Real tight. Real tight.
Be a real man.
Back it up, Terry. Oh, Lord, Terry. What are you doing, Terry?
Come on. You like fireworks so much. Prove it.
Fuck off.
Why don't you eat one?
Yeah.
Why don't you eat one? Oh, I hate fireworks now.
My
dog couldn't have been more scared for 45 straight minutes. And then here's the other thing I'll say about this before we move on to brighter pastures. So we have one neighbor who legit puts on like a 40-minute show that like your town would be embarrassed by. Okay, we're kind of used to it. That's sort of one thing. After that idiot finishes his show, 10, 20 minutes go by, enough where the dog kind of relaxes, and then some other idiot blasts off like 5 shitty ones. Not even like, even if you're into it, they sucked. You didn't get your money's worth. And all it literally was just enough to scare the dog more.
And it's just like,
and you're like, what the fuck? And I don't even care.
Fucking bottle rocket.
Because I'm not even one of these like, oh, it's late. Like, yeah, it was late. I don't give a shit if it's late. Like, my dog is freaking out. No, I know, but other people do. You're right.
No, your child does. Your dog does.
Knock on wood. The child slept through it.
Fireworks fucking stink. If you still like fireworks and you're over 30 years old,
oh my God,
figure it out.
Yep.
Fuck you, dickhead.
Fuck you, dickhead.
There you go.
Anyway,
sparklers and snakes. That's what I'm all about. Like Joe Dirt.
Sparklers and snakes. Oh my God, that just fucking that just fired me up. Ryan, how about this movie trailer? And I know that you've seen it.
Yeah.
Don't Breathe 2 just came out.
Oh.
We tweeted it out at Dork Podcast. The film comes out August 13th. This was something.
Scary Daredevil is what it is.
It kind of is. It's horror Daredevil.
It's Scary Daredevil.
Daredevil.
Scare Devil. Well, thank you very much. That's been Dork Podcast for this week. Thank you guys very much.
It's Scare Devil.
Trademark.
We just
I said it. TM. Timestamp it.
We got it.
Scare Devil.
Monday night. We just touched the sun on
We
the
did.
podcast.
On Wings of Wax.
And it burned.
Yeah. Like the jerky. Callbacks.
Guys, remember when we talked about the jerky from earlier? That's what we're referring to again. It's a crispy jerky. Scare Devil.
We did it. We've done it. We have come to the end of the podcast.
So listen, if you've been paying close attention, I know most of you have. We have a very intelligent audience. Last week we gave you anti-villain. This week we gave you
Scare Devil. Trademark. Someone tweet it right now. Someone tweet it right now.
Say
Dork Podcast.
Dork.
Coined it at 9/11
Monday night,
7/5.
July the 5th.
Yep.
2021. I got nothing more to say about
I got
that.
nothing. We're good. No, it looks awesome.
Speaking of trailers, the Many Saints of Newark. Obviously, this will be an HBO Max, as it's the prequel to The Sopranos, which I get a lot of heat for this, but not my favorite show. Not in my top 5.
Nope. There's enough fat on that. There's a lot of sizzle, a good amount of steak, but there's a lot of sizzle there.
I thought for the most part, the last season was pretty weak, and not even to get into the finale, which a lot of people had a problem with.
I didn't, but a lot of people had a problem with it.
Kind of Game of Thrones-ish.
Right.
Like the last season wasn't great. And I also think out of all the great shows, you just hit on it. Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul, The Wire, The Leftovers, whatever. Every part has some payoff or some reason to do it. Whereas The Sopranos, you're like, oh, they didn't need to do any of that. Like that whole arc, they could probably just
anytime, and I'm going to say this right now, this might be a Rossian take, but anytime AJ Soprano is on the screen, fuck out of here. I don't need it.
take a long hike.
I don't need it.
Off a short pier.
Yeah.
If you can. Ryan, TV. I haven't caught up on everything yet, but in 2 weeks we will do Loki, as it's only 6 episodes. Episode 4.
Strong.
Awesome episode
Strong.
4 of Loki. Great finish too to that. Where so there's a mid credits.
Yes.
And so where that goes,
nobody knows.
Nobody knows. Nobody
knows what the hell just
goddamn
happened.
Clue. And then
wait,
I did not see Bad Batch.
Oh, I'm here to tell you. So there, what are we on? Like 11? See, episode 11.
We're getting up there.
Might be the worst episode of the series.
Fuck.
It stunk. Like it was one of those ones where, and our buddy Fridge, who I hope is listening because he's a very big wrestling guy, and I hope I don't embarrass him, but nothing happened.
Oh no.
Nothing.
That stinks. That is one of the problems. We're just talking about Sopranos.
Yeah.
Like that's the Clone Wars at the best is so good, but then there's just a lot of unnecessary stuff. So that sounds like that.
Yep.
So are we even going to do a standalone Bad Batch episode?
Depends on how it ends.
Okay.
I think so we have, I mean, these are 3 episode, Filoni likes his like 3 episode arcs, right?
Yeah, right.
So hopefully the last 3 episodes, we can talk about those.
Okay.
The last, and the 3 episodes, they just ended, and hope this is 2 weeks old. So,
right.
But
so stick on
the
it.
Cad Bane stuff, was great.
I love the Cad Bane stuff. So I think if this series pulls in what's his nuts, Grogu, we're gonna have to talk about it,
right?
Or if it sort of has a thing where it's gonna, I think it already maybe had like set up some sort of Mandalorian type stuff, or no, not Mandalorian, Boba Fett, like that. So we'll have to do it.
Can we talk about this?
What? How spoiler is it for Bad Batch?
Because okay, so this happened in like 2 weeks ago. Like they mentioned something in the Bad Batch.
Yeah, I think go ahead.
Okay, so technically, Omega is Boba Fett's sister.
Yeah.
So that
has to play,
and they have to bring that up in the Boba Fett series.
Spoilers. We should have played it before. I understand we should have played it before, but we didn't. We're playing it. We're playing it now. Okay.
But to me, I mean, that's the linchpin of the show.
Yes.
Is that she is the female version. So her and Boba are the exact genetic clones of Jango.
Mm-hmm.
So that needs to be addressed at some point in the future.
I agree. And then what's the other show that we watch? Oh, Dave. I didn't finish this episode yet because I was busy. It was Good one.
I think we're starting to turn the corner.
Okay,
I mean, this episode is still very stressful.
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. So it's starting to turn the corner.
Okay.
A little bit.
All right.
Allie's back in the picture now.
Yes.
So that's nice.
Yes.
It's not perfect.
Great.
It's Gata was full Gata this episode. So that was good. Yeah.
Love it. And then Rick and Morty. I don't know if there was a new one or not.
I don't know. It was the fourth.
Yeah, so maybe there wasn't.
But I did watch the second one. It was good.
Okay.
It was good. Yeah.
All right, Ryan, should we get to the next portion of the program that people like? Should I have bought this? And it's brought to you by 47 Brand. Go to 47brand.com and use the promo code #dork at checkout for 20% off your order. More than just hats. Of course, Davey and I actually are both wearing Bruins hats, different versions of. Mine's on backwards, but just take my word for it. It's a Bruins hat. Davey's got the old. Look at the fucking bear on there. Look at that thing. Look at that brown bear.
It's a good faux 7.
Look at that brown bear. But they have other stuff too. If you like t-shirts, you like sweatshirts, like whatever you like, they have it. And use #dork at checkout. Again, 20% off of that. But this is an opportunity for you to email us, dorkpodcast@gmail.com, something that you bought that was more than $25. If you'd like a brief description, but send us a photo of it and we will answer the question, should I have bought this? And also, coming up on August 15th at Idle Hands, a Dork live show alongside Mac and Goo. We're going to do the first ever Dork Teaks Roadshow, where you, the listener, show up at the event. That's the first step. Second step, bring something that you bought and show it to us. We will describe what it is.
Yep.
We will guess how much money it costs. And then you will tell us actually how much money it costs. And then we'll tell you whether you should have bought it or not. Seems pretty simple.
Sounds cool. And what a way for you to spend a Sunday. Just bring something from your house and present it to strangers.
Present it to us. And we'll tell you. We will answer the goddamn question if or not you should have bought it. Let's take you right now to the stream here on YouTube. And Ryan, for those listening on the podcast, what do you see in front of you? This comes in courtesy of Tim.
So Tim has sent us in what looks like a cornhole set.
It looks like a cornhole set
with stars and stripes. We have stripes and stars for the bags, which is very patriotic, very 4th of July.
That's why I did it for this. He sent this in a while ago, but I saved it for the 4th of July episode.
And interestingly, they are decal. These aren't painted. These aren't drawn. This is a straight poster print of the Justice League on one side and the Avengers on the other side. The promo pictures of the entire team.
Yeah, kind of I like that. So Justice League from the first Snyder movie, I guess, or Joss Whedon, whatever you want to call it. But that's sort of the 6 of them standing side by side. And then it's Avengers, and it's sort of like it's kind of 2-tiered there, but it has all 6 of the original Avengers. And I'll give you one more thing before I tell you the price. This might seal the deal for you. But if you look close, he sent a bunch of pictures. I only have a couple of them here. Here we go. If you look closely, LED lighting inside the holes. There's 2 different colors, but this one that we're showing you here is green. So say you're playing at dusk. Say you're playing at night. You're bold enough to play at night. You'd still be able to see the hole. So Tim, a colleague of Tim, I shouldn't have said it that way.
You did it. Yep. Someone's going to clip that.
Conflicted about whether to say anything because I feel like Michael Patrick Porkins could win it even without the oral. His father didn't need to do the oral. And that is why this is so tough for me to tell about the oral.
Makes sense.
It's tough.
So here's the deal. It's a cornhole set. You get the bags, like Davey said, stars and stripes bags, the very important LED lighting. So it was a colleague of Tim who has like a project where he's a woodworker and makes all this stuff.
Great.
So he bought it for $300. $300. Let's zoom in on Ryan's face again when I told you that. $300.
$300?
I don't think he used rapples.
American dollars?
A bag of Bobish. $300.
I was in.
Yep.
Until you said $300.
You didn't like the price.
I don't like the price on that.
I like the price point.
Now, Tim, I like the board.
It's a good set.
It's a good set.
A great set.
I don't like the price point.
price is high.
If you were to ask me, I would have said 125 to 150.
Oh, so you're cutting that in half.
I'm half that.
Mm-hmm.
And even then, like,
mm-hmm.
that's steep, man.
You know me, as you kindly say, I can stretch a buck.
You sure can.
That does seem kind of high to me. And again, I like it. I love cornhole. Cornhole is super fun.
It's super fun.
In fact, it's the best of the lawn games because you can have one hand drinking a beer.
Well, I think that's one of those games where that's mandatory.
It's all right. Yeah, I've never played it without it.
You need it.
One hand?
If you're not playing with one in the hand, then what are we doing?
You're tossing. You're having a nice time.
Throws me off when I don't have a.
Right. Oh yeah. Actually, that'd be bizarre. Imagine throwing that. You got two loose hands. You're like, I don't know what to do. So I think
like Ricky Bobby. Be like, not sure what to do with my hands.
Yeah, listen, love the set. Hope you enjoy the set. I hope you play the balls off this thing. But the $300, the price point, a bit high.
A little high.
Get the fuck out of here.
Get the fuck out of here.
Sorry, T-Bone. I like it.
Get the fuck out of here, though.
And if you have the disposable income to spend $300 on a cornhole set, God love you.
Must be nice.
If I came home with that and my wife said, awesome, how much was that? And I said $300.
Get the fuck out of here.
Nope, she would send me on an errand to go get scratchies and cigarettes, and I'd come back and she'd be gone.
She'd be gone.
Yeah.
She would leave you.
Right.
Your wife would leave
That's
you.
not true, but
you
get the idea.
Kids.
Yeah.
Think about that. Think about that, folks.
Yep.
Nice item, though.
Mm-hmm.
But again, that's where the price point comes into play. The price point's pretty important.
It's not just the look of it.
Looks like the chat was kind of similar mindset to us.
So
like the item, but
I think those lights were battery operated. If I were to guess, it would have to have been.
You think so?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I would assume so.
I mean, I don't think you would get.
Well,
you
don't have to go to a
plug it
fucking
in.
wall. Hey, you guys got a really long extension cord,
so we could play cornhole in the dark.
Like, no, man,
no,
we don't. All right, Ryan, I got a question for you.
What?
You all ready for bisque?
Are you gonna skip my shit?
Oh shit!
You skip my shit?
It's time for Davey.
Unbelievable.
I even wrote it down.
Even if it takes more than a minute.
Time now, of course, for the Davies Video Game Minute as planned.
And this portion of the show, as always, generously brought to us by Wild Bill Soda. Go to drinkwildbills.com, use the promo code RonVonD. Get yourself out. Just like the faux sevens, get yourself 20% off some nice bevs. You know, if you're playing cornhole, you need a bev.
Oh, it's soda season. Get out there.
Not only that, you know what it is? It's more than soda season. It's mixer season. A lot of mixed drinks.
I love a mixed drink.
And Wild Bill Soda is probably by far the best soda to mix with.
Oh my god!
On its own, it's great, but mixing is unbelievable. I had one last night.
What'd you have?
I had a blackberry soda and rum. Oh my god! With a little bit of lime.
That is so nice.
Woo! Kraken rum, dark rum. Good shit, right?
Why don't you bring any of that over here?
I should have next week. We'll bring that over. We'll drink Wild Bills. We'll have a
oh
mix
my
of drink.
god, we're gonna have the best time next week. Not to wish this week away. This week's been going great too, but next week's gonna be a fucking blast.
So I got a couple things. We'll make it short because we had a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
So I started playing, and I mentioned this on Twitter right after we stopped recording. So we recorded on Tuesday. The next day, I turned on Super Smash Brothers, and Kazuya from Tekken is on there.
Awesome,
and he's
a killer.
Phenomenal.
Yeah,
absolute killer. Like no business. If you're Link, you have no business fighting this guy, even with a sword.
Really?
He'll get you.
He's good. I was never a fan of him, like using him in any of the Tekken games. But if you're into the Tekken storyline, very important character.
And Devil Jin shows up. So Devil Jin, you can do like the
Devil Jin.
lasers.
I had a average Devil Jin.
Yeah,
but a Kazuya couldn't do it.
Oh, sorry, Kazuya, the Devil Kazuya, the demon.
No, but I'm saying like just
Devil
like the
Jin
standard version, I couldn't really do much of. But
and he's great. So definitely check that out.
Right.
I finished the campaign, the golf story on Mario Golf. I finished it.
Oh, cool.
It's a little kiddie, but
what's your character up to? Level what?
Like 62.
All right.
I am.
All right. So by the way, we should plan maybe after this the first #DORK open.
Yes,
and we'll get everybody involved. And then this is what I was thinking too. We do 4 majors that everybody has to compete in, and then you can do regular events that you whatever if you can. But each group of the Dork Shared Universe should have their own major.
Because there's 5 courses?
4 majors.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So whatever. So one can be a bonus, but we pick a course And then at the end, we can like keep track of like who won all the majors.
Do like a point system, like the right. Okay, cool. I like that.
Yes.
Is it stroke or speed? We going stroke or speed?
So
it depends on the event. Depends on who's hosting the event, I guess.
Absolutely. Great.
Yep.
We should do a mix. We should make sure that we have both.
And get it queued up. And if you want to do a cross-country event,
This is This
No,
Week
we gotta
in
get the
Horrible
fuck? Do you know how many
Rossi Takes.
sounders I have?
get the fuck out of here.
Get the fuck out of here!
I thought you were asking for this one.
I have seen a security hologram of him killing younglings.
There's no coming back from that. He killed younglings.
He did. And the last,
so many younglings.
So the last part of Davey's video game minute this week. So EA has now teased out that they are going to announce this week the return of another one of their sports franchises.
Crazy.
There's some front runners.
So obviously NCAA football is already coming out in
NCAA
2
football.
years or whatever. Right.
So the people are speculating, is it, I don't think it's MVP baseball because MLB is like locked up with
the show.
With the show.
Yeah, yeah.
So I don't know if it's MVP baseball. Here are some of the front runners it could be. Fight Night.
Here's my one problem with Fight Night.
Boxing sucks now.
Yes. What current boxers would you have in it that people cared about? You'd have to go all classic boxers again. But I did like Fight Night. Fight Night was fun as hell.
Fight Night's fucking awesome. The other one was
SSX.
basketball, SSX. The most fun.
You love that. Yeah, I know.
The only game, sports game that was more fun than SSX, NBA Street.
Oh, NBA Street.
NBA Street was the shit.
NBA
P-Rock and
Street.
CL Smooth in the beginning.
Yeah.
They reminisce over you as the game comes on.
I did like that.
Oh, that game was
I
the
wish
shit.
I had that ready. I don't have that in the board, but
Oh, maybe you could like
Wish I
pick
had
your own
that.
3-person team.
it's great. Yeah, that'd be good.
That
Is
would
that
be
your
really
pick,
good.
or would you rather have SSX?
Either SSX
Okay.
or
Street
or NBA Street.
All right.
And get out of here with the NFL Street. That sucked.
No, I didn't like that either.
No,
Nah,
Blitz
nah.
was better.
I'm good. Yeah, I'd rather have Blitz.
Yeah.
You ready for Bisque? Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I'm glad you asked. It's the topic of the day. Today it is Dark Side of the Ring, and we're going seasons 1 and 2. We know right now they're currently airing season 3. They've taken a little bit of a break, so it's a hiatus. About half of season 3 has already aired on Vice, but we are going to talk about every episode from season 1 and 2. If you've missed this show, you can go back and watch it on Hulu or Discovery Plus. They used to have episodes on YouTube, but I feel like it's gotten really popular where they started to pull them down. But I originally watched a bunch of these on YouTube, but they are both available on those other two as well. We will begin. And by the way, it is a total. Season 1 is 6 episodes. Season 2 is 10 episodes, but only 9 subjects. One of the subjects is 2 parts. So we're going to talk about 16 episodes, 15 different subjects, and we'll begin spoiler free as we always do. Ryan, did you like it?
I did. The highs were incredibly high.
Yeah.
And the worst episodes were fine.
So that's, I agree. I think it's a great documentary series where even the bad, actually, there is no bad episode. So to me, even if we start to be like, this one, still to me worth watching. The highs definitely are the ones that you like still remember and still want to talk about. But I tried coming up with the rankings, and I've also watched season 3. I know Davey hasn't. I've started to watch that. So I've tried to rank them as well. There's really no bad episode. And the other crazy part about it is they're all hour-long episodes with commercials. So they're really 44 minutes.
Yeah.
So you think about all these documentaries that we watch now, it's like 3 to 10 parts on Netflix, or it's 2 hours on regular. This is 44 minutes, and they tell so much of a story. I think what they do a great job of is getting most of the people that you would want to talk about that subject to talk about it.
Yeah, and then we have it on in the background right
We'll
now.
watch
So
it here,
if you, it's on mute. Like I'm kind of like, even now I'm just like drawn to it. So to flip what you said. So I think the best episode is a 6.
Yep.
And the worst episode is like a 3.
Yeah, I would say even a 4.
And there's
for me.
one, and there's 1 3. We'll talk about that.
Okay.
In spoilers.
Yeah,
There's
yeah,
1,
yeah.
3.
But there's a few 6s where I would think it's
Yes.
even itself is probably like the series itself is more 5 or 6. The other key thing is it is not produced by WWE,
Which is good.
Is great. Most documentaries that you see, wrestling ones, are produced by WWE, but Beyond the Mat, for example, isn't, like Wrestling with Shadows isn't, and those ones are awesome. Like Beyond the Mat, we could do a whole episode on.
And there was the other one, The Redemption of Jake the Snake. That was a good one.
But was that might have been
WWE. Even still, I mean,
but even still, no, someone and like A&E recently did a whole bunch of characters, and they were pretty good, but they have the WWE stuff on, so they don't get into it. Like, I think the one big takeaway is there's a handful of people that the WWE just straight up doesn't want to even talk about anymore.
Yes.
And some for better reason than others, but there's a whole bunch of them. And whereas this series is like, all right, who's the characters they don't want to talk about? We're going to do a whole thing on it. And so that's what I've really liked. I also think you don't need to be a wrestling fan to like most of these.
No. So I was watching the one that I told everyone here I wasn't going to watch, and I watched it. And I was sitting there watching it with my wife today, and she was like, I mean, she loves true crime documentaries.
This
she
is what
loves,
this is.
and that's what think of like a true crime documentary, but with wrestlers.
Yeah.
And she was in it. She was like, so wait, who's that? And she was like asking me questions. You know, when people are like asking you questions, like they pretend not to be watching,
but they,
and then
sure
they like, so wait,
yeah.
so he knows, right? So we'll get into that. But
I definitely agree with that because it's very true crime. Because most of these characters, if you just, and we're gonna go through each one in order, but the vast majority of the characters, or I keep saying characters, but like wrestlers that they
personas
talk about,
yeah,
most of them are dead.
Yes,
almost all of them. And that was one of the things like growing up too. Remember, it was the old dead wrestlers thing. Like,
yeah,
wrestlers didn't last very long. Like that lifestyle was insane, and like the steroid and drug abuse and everything else. Like the schedule
and like injuries and just
like, it's off the charts, and they would just die so quick. But this dark side has done such a good job.
But it's funny. Like I don't mean to be laughing, but it's like a lot of these people are dead, and the ones who aren't, you're like, how are you not dead?
Right. There's like the Keith Richards version of it,
like,
where you're like, yeah,
how are you not
this
dead?
guy? Like, what the fuck? So what is we'll get into it more obviously in spoilers, but right now, if somebody was going to watch one of these that hasn't watched it, what's your one favorite episode?
It's 1A and 1B for me.
Okay, go ahead.
1A, New Jack.
So that would be season 2, episode 3, The Life and Crimes of New Jack.
And yes, so season 2, episode 8, Cocaine and Cowboy Boots, the Herb Abrams story, which in and of itself, that is the best title of it.
100%. Yeah.
Cocaine and Cowboy Boots.
Yeah.
This one needs to be made into a movie, and I tweeted about it, and I could perfectly casted it.
Yeah. Who would play him?
Jonah Hill.
Yep. I can see that.
Like
I can
Jonah Hill lose
that.
a little bit of weight, and like, well, he has, but like if skinny Jonah Hill, skinny.
Yep.
Thinner Jonah Hill can play Herb Abrams. Easy.
Oh yeah, that's
easy.
That's a really good one.
And what a fucking fascinating story that was.
Well, so that's what's so great about this series too, is that there are some character. Why do I keep saying characters? There are some episodes of wrestlers that they talked about
you could play him right now.
We know so much about. There's Herb up there, but like, you know, they do one on like Owen Hart or the Road Warriors or the Montreal Screwjob. And as a wrestling fan, I'm like, yeah, I feel like I know everything about that. And they still give you a few things that you don't. But then they also introduce characters like Herb Abrams, who I had no idea about prior to this. And I'm like, this is insane. Or like New Jack. I knew a little bit of New Jack.
I remember watching New Jack and some of the things he did. And again, how are you not dead?
How is he not dead? I remember ECW.
Or how did you not
New
kill
Jack.
somebody?
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Yeah.
But New Jack's definitely my favorite one so far. I also really liked the Dave Schultz episode, which we'll get to, about like this guy and how he got erased.
So New Jack is dead now, right?
Yeah, New Jack,
but he was in the episode. He's a lot. They interview him. So
thankfully they were able to do this last year and talk to him, because he was a big part of his episode. But yeah, he had a heart attack earlier this year, I believe, and died. All right, what would your hashtag dork score be if you had to combine season 1 and season 2?
5.
Yeah, I'm going 5.5 because I loved it. And even like the bad episodes, like I said, they just move so quick and you at least pick up a nugget or two. You don't have to be a wrestling fan. I know you were.
I was just about to say that. Like, you're a bigger wrestling fan than I.
I still like it.
And
here
I
there.
liked, there was enough, I knew, I mean, I watched, if you are our age and weren't watching wrestling in like the 90s, like the Attitude Era, like what were you doing?
Yeah, that's actually a good point. Like, so like all of the I would say my main wrestling obsession was from like 90 to 01.
Mm-hmm.
And then like, you know, you go to college and you're kind of away from it for a while.
You're doing other things.
Yeah. You're kind of interested in other things. And then I got roped back into it. And again, I don't watch it weekly. I watch WrestleMania every year. I watch the Royal Rumble every year. I'll peep in on some of the NXT pay-per-views because I think they have good matches. And I have like a general awareness like of who's wrestling. But I think it was the 2011 Royal Rumble was in Boston.
Yes.
And that was when I was working at the Sports Hub, and Damon Amendolara had an extra ticket. He's like, "Do you want to go to the Rumble?" I was like, "Yeah, I'll go to the Rumble." And I was like, "Why am I not watching this anymore? Like, this is great. Like, this is fantastic." So I dip in and out, but I love these documentaries. I am all in on these documentaries. So do you want to just go through each episode or All right.
Yeah,
so let's start. So let's, I guess,
hit the buzzer.
Spoilers! Spoilers! Here come the spoilers!
All right, season 1, episode 1, called The Match Made in Heaven. This one is all about Randy Savage and Miss Elizabeth. And this is one, David, where I would say, as a big wrestling fan and having listened to some podcasts that like are on wrestling, I feel like there wasn't a ton new here.
No.
But still worth discussing. Like, they're pretty important characters. Two, unfortunately, tragic stories. Both died way too young. Were a major impact. And like when I first got into wrestling, like Miss Elizabeth was the first female I remember being in wrestling. And Macho Man, and they kind of get into this a little bit, but there was always Hulk Hogan. And then it was like, all right, after Hulk Hogan, who was like the next guy? And as a kid, I liked Ultimate Warrior a lot. But Randy Savage had sort of that longer reign as being like the legit number 2 and like a better wrestler.
Yeah, I mean, he was the first guy I remember being like him and Snuka were like the first guys I remember like knowing what a high flyer was. Like those are the first 2 guys I remember being like, oh, so, or Ricky Steamboat. Like I watched wrestling then too, and like I think I remembered one of the first wrestling memories I have is when they got married like, in the ring. Like I remember that, and I remember playing the old stand-up arcade like WWF game, and like Miss Elizabeth was in it.
Oh yeah,
like she was big time. She was big time.
Miss Elizabeth was it. I mean, there were how many women were like and like that character. Like everybody was obsessed with Miss Elizabeth. Like, people loved Miss Elizabeth.
That was an awakening for a lot of people in the 80s.
I would say that it was. And just what a mess too. And like, so one thing I never really understood, I don't even know if it was ever explained, but so Macho Man was a huge part of the 80s, and obviously his WrestleMania 3 match is one of the great matches of all time against Steamboat. And then you get into the 90s, and Vince McMahon wanted to like introduce these new wrestlers into the mix, and he put Savage on commentary and like didn't have him wrestle anymore. He's like, his wrestling days are done. I'm like, he's not done.
He's not done. He went and wrestled in WCW for like 10 years.
Right. It's like kind of what forced him into WCW. It was like, he's like, well, I'm not done wrestling anymore. And then they forced him there. And then, by the way, WCW, he got pretty big. He got a little bit bigger.
Those guys, I mean, you look at like Buff Bagwell, like those dudes.
Oh, Scott Steiner.
I think they were a little loosey-goosey with the...
Might have been. But like, that was the whole thing. Like now, like Savage is an NWO, Miss Elizabeth is an NWO. Then they start to like branch out. And you're like, all right.
Yeah.
It's kind of losing its luster here for me.
Right. And it was, I mean, as you know, I mean, the WWF, now WWE, but now was like the big time. Right. And then WCW was like just underneath, you know? And I feel like one of the overarching themes in this entire show, and it starts with this, is like there were a lot of Vince McMahon does not come off very well.
No,
a lot of times.
And that's what I think is the major difference between like a WWE produced documentary and these ones. And it's also crazy to see the length of time that Vince McMahon like spans.
Was it like 78 or 77 to like now?
Yeah, so like you see him getting into these arguments with like wrestlers from like the mid 80s.
Yeah.
And then like today.
Well, it's funny. So my wife was asking me, she's like, all right, so if these people are wrestling in like different things, like they're wrestling in Japan, they're wrestling in WCW, they're wrestling all this stuff. She's like, why don't they just like unionize? Or why don't they just like, because one of the things that she kept like, we talk about like people getting hurt. And a lot of people don't know that these guys are all independent contractors. So technically they're not employed by the WWE. So they're like responsible for their own healthcare. They're responsible for their own like insurance.
It's not great.
It sucks. Like this life. And she's like, well, why don't they? I'm like, we have to understand, like, once people started getting big, and this is one of the things like WCW or ECW, WWE just buys them.
Yeah, that was the big thing. The big takeaway too is like there was all these territories for the longest time, and then once Vince took over for his dad, he's like, oh, we're just gonna like the territory would be the United States,
right?
So now all these like Southwest or Canada or like whatever, like Texas, like no, we'll just take those guys. Yeah, let's take them, and then they're gone, and there's nowhere else to wrestle. And even today, like AEW, where Jericho is, like that's a decent company, but like nothing's like WWE.
And once they start getting big,
yeah,
they'll get bought out.
Yeah. Oh yeah, probably.
Yeah.
So that one's decent. Savage and Miss Elizabeth. So then the second episode is the Montreal Screwjob, which of course is again talking about WWF and WCW. Bret Hart has the title, but he's going to go to WCW, but he doesn't want to lose it in Canada to Shawn Michaels. So Vince McMahon basically double crosses him and has the ref in on it, Shawn Michaels in on it. They ring the bell, even though he didn't tap out, and they get the belt that way.
So I'm glad that they did this one before doing the Owen Hart episode.
Me too.
Because it makes the Owen Hart story much more compelling.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not to give so when Owen Hart passes away, his wife sues rightfully the whole company for a wrongful death claim. Everyone in the Hart family, or half the Hart family, turns their back on her, and
which
so
is
like
crazy to me.
After what they did to Bret,
I know,
and what they did to Owen,
and they were still like, oh, but yeah,
like
that part was crazy. That was the other thing, because that whole Canadian company, and you'll see once you get to the Dynamite Kid episode in season 3, they basically just took over Stampede Wrestling, and they're like, we'll take like the few wrestlers that are any good, which included Bret, which included Dynamite Kid, but the whole Bret Hart thing was crazy too, because Bret Hart didn't want to leave WWF.
No.
And he signed this crazy long contract with them, like a 25-year contract or something insane. And then Vince was like, yeah, I don't think we can pay you. So go back to WCW and see what they're asking. So Eric Bischoff, who was just paying for everybody at that point, was like, all right, and bought Bret Hart. Actually, Jericho has a good story about how much money he gave him. And like Bischoff was just buying everybody back then, like mid to late 90s. And so Bret Hart goes in there, but which was pretty, I think, kind of compelling, is he and Shawn Michaels actually hated each other. Like it wasn't like a wrestling shtick. Like they hated each other. They just like he thought Shawn Michaels was disrespectful and like this whole thing. And they had a great angle going. Like this was our heyday of watching.
Right.
And so we remember it was so funny to me because when Bret Hart and the Hart Foundation showed up in any United States city, they got booed. But then as soon as Raw was in Montreal or Calgary, they got cheered.
Yeah.
It was like a very Canada versus US thing. And so at the end, they're like, hey, you're going to lose to Shawn. And he's like, I don't want to lose to Shawn. And then they're like, all right, you won't lose to Shawn in Montreal. That's fine. And they fucking give him the old
quick count.
The old quick count. No,
he spits in the boss's face.
So he puts him in the sharpshooter.
Yeah.
And then fucking Earl Hebner, this boob.
Yeah.
He says he tapped out. And then Bret Hart not only spits in Vince McMahon's face, but then goes back into the locker room and punches him out. Like legit punches him out. And Undertaker was all fired up, the whole thing. Now, this is one, though, as a wrestling fan, and if you listen to any of the podcasts and stuff, like, no real new territory.
No,
here.
It wasn't new.
But pretty cool.
Yeah.
All right, episode 3 was the killing of Bruiser Brody.
Oh, my God. This guy fucking psycho.
This
like, I knew-ish about Bruiser Brody.
Right.
But, like, seeing him in Puerto Rico or, like, Japan, and people, he had that fucking huge chain and he's like swinging it around his head. And it was like a 20-pound chain.
Yeah, he's a big fella.
And he's swinging it around his head. And people are like running. Like he's in the crowd, fucking swinging a chain around.
There's a different time there in the 80s. Because again, this was the time I kind of missed. Like when I watched it, it was all like WWF and then WCW and then ECW.
Mm-hmm.
But like growing up, like the generation just before us was where it was more like territories and like where these guys were wrestling. So Bruiser Brody was a monster in the 80s, and he went down to Puerto Rico and fought a guy named actually no, wasn't even a match. It was backstage. Got into a confrontation with Invader 1, who was Jose Gonzalez, and stabbed him to death. Yeah. And then pleaded like self-defense and got away with it. But what was crazy about this episode was Tony Atlas, who was there talking about it, and then Abdullah the Butcher. This guy, what the fuck?
What happened to Abdullah the Butcher? Looks like 3 miles of torn up road right now. You see his head? Like,
It's not
like,
right.
his head
Just
is just
he must have
he
must have just cut himself every match.
Yeah.
Abdullah's head doesn't look right. It doesn't look right.
No.
Like Dusty Rhodes before he died, pick of the pod.
Yeah.
His was like that too. Like they just every single night must have been
just the, what do they call it? The
Abdullah the Butcher.
Oh
that
my
guy
God.
was not in great shape either. As a
No.
professional wrestler.
He's broken down.
But this one was crazy. And this is also sort of leads to a theme too. Like when some of these guys go to other countries, it's like you're kind of on your own because I don't know. All the different Puerto Rican wrestlers seem to sort of keep it to themselves, and we're just like, well, whatever.
But and again, I'm going to use a wrestling term that I've only recently become familiar with, and I ask Fridge all the time what this means, and his answer is like, it doesn't really mean anything anymore. But this idea of like kayfabe,
huge,
which is it's a Japanese word, but basically it means like you're in it. It's like if you're a heel, if you go outside the ring, you can't. You
For
have
example,
to respect like the character. Yeah.
So in WrestleMania 2000 that we played in 64, you and I were the party boys.
Sure were.
So we would be kayfabe brothers.
Yes.
So like we would have to then go around in like the city and stuff and be like, that's my brother.
That's my brother.
Even though
Yeah.
we're not actually brothers. But
Right,
that's
so
what,
Bruiser
like kayfabe.
Brody
Yeah.
had to be this like fucking psycho.
Yeah.
Even out of the ring.
Right.
And we'll get into that with like Dave Schultz and stuff too. But like
right.
But like that was an idea. Like if you were a heel, you had to be heel all the time.
All
in
the
the public,
time.
you had to act like that person.
Yeah.
Which is not, they don't
then-
really do it anymore because they're
Well, like Jim Cornette, like it's all pissed about guys that don't do that now. And it's like, bro,
let's talk about him.
Yeah. He's in like most of these.
He's in most of these, and he probably knows more about wrestling than anybody on the planet.
Oh, he's a wrestling historian,
But
clearly.
he's a fucking nerd. Like you're a nerd. Like he's like that guy who's like involved in the business, but not really, but pretends
Yeah.
like he is. Like
well,
he was there.
He was involved.
But he was like but you know what I mean? Like
No, I know.
you weren't in the ring.
Oh, he didn't wrestle. He managed a few guys.
Right. But like you weren't,
No, I
he
know.
talks about these matches like he participated.
No, I know. I mean, he
Like, you
booked
didn't.
probably someone. Well, he
I'm sure
ran
he
that
did,
Smoky Mountain, but whatever. But I get your
You get what
point.
I'm saying.
I do get what you're saying. And I guess he was very critical of guys before, like being like friendly, like outside of the ring. It's like, dude, people get it. People want to see a show.
Right.
I'm all for it. Like if two guys hate each other in the ring or whatever, great. Guess what? If they're friends out of the ring, it's fine.
Okay, so here is a great parallel that we can both your worlds. Jim Cornette is that guy who's like a sports radio guy
Mhm.
who's played JV baseball,
Mhm.
right? Talking about how a guy can't hit a 98-mile-an-hour slider. Like, how the hell can you not hit that? I'm like,
Yeah.
you've never done it.
Come on, buddy.
Like, what the fuck? If
Get
I
in
threw you, if
Take one power
Nathan
bomb.
Eovaldi threw you 100 pitches, you might touch one.
Nah. Only if he wanted you to.
Right.
Only that's it.
Like, there's no way.
Yeah.
Like, you're a nerd. Get the fuck out of here.
Episode 4 was the last of the Von Erichs. So this is a group where in Texas, they were the biggest thing in the world. They were like the Beatles. They were crazy. And again, for us being from the Northeast, the only recollection I have of the Von Erichs was Kerry Von Erich came to the WWF kind of early 90s, early mid 90s, and he was the Texas Tornado.
Yes.
What was so fucked is he wrestled then on like one foot. He got in a horrible car accident. They like did something to his leg. It wasn't even like a legit prosthetic.
It's a
It was like
peg.
93. And he wrestled. He fucking wrestled like that. None of these guys, this is like the saddest story in the world. None of these, there's one of them left, Kevin Von Erich, and he's a big part of this episode. They're all dead. Like 3 of them by suicide. It's insane. It's like an insanely
Super
sad story.
Yeah.
But the Von Erichs ran Texas, and what's nuts is their father, Fritz Von Erich.
What a name.
Fritz Von Erich. He was like, this is the wrestling mindset for some of those guys back then. He's like, all right, what would be the biggest villain? I got it. Nazi. He wrestled as a Nazi. Like, dude, I wouldn't go. Like, you're getting heat. I'm not doing it.
It's like the
like, what would I
It's
do?
Always Sunny when cricket is the Taliban.
Right? It is. It's the same thing. So Fritz was a Nazi. All of his sons wrestled, and they were just like some of the video that they showed of that was like the girls going crazy.
Yeah.
The crowd went wild.
They were
for these
handsome
Von Erichs.
dudes. They were big, fucking muscular, handsome
big,
dudes.
handsome, all Texas All-Americans. The Mysterious Death of Gorgeous Gino is episode 5.
Now, I feel like we can kind of marry 2 of these episodes right now.
Go ahead.
So, the Mysterious Death of Gorgeous Gino and the Assassination of Dino Bravo are essentially the same episode.
Yeah, they kind of are. They're very similar.
One thing, so Gorgeous Gino gets involved. He becomes like a drug dealer, basically, right?
So what's crazy about the Gino episode, and you're right, yes, and he started at one point in the episode, Jake the Snake Roberts says Gino hung out with some bad people.
Jake the Snake.
So Jake the Snake viewed Gino as like what he was running with was like kind of dangerous.
And Jake the Snake is like, we're all doing the same shit. Like we're all doing the same thing. Like I did drugs with Gino, but like
and Gino, I think I want to say also at one point was probably fighting the Von Erichs. That was all around a similar time. I think he might have been down in that area, but that was sort of a weird one, and we still don't really know. And in fact, didn't they say like cause of death was like drug overdose?
And
but everyone's like, no fucking
he had
way.
like 5 times the amount of cocaine in his system that would have killed him.
So there is something real.
And there was those cool stories
I know
about him taking a sugar bowl, like an actual like sugar bowl out of his cabinet that was full of cocaine.
Insane.
Like, it was like Blow, like
Insane.
the movie Blow, but he was a wrestler. And then similar story. So Dino Bravo, who was in Montreal, he was like the big booker and like the best wrestler in Montreal, which was another territory.
Right.
Gets involved with the mob.
Yeah.
Because he was Italian, but he was French Canadian. Like he spoke odd.
And he was doing it was like cigarettes.
Yeah.
It wasn't like cocaine.
Type
it
shit.
wasn't like, it was like cigarettes that got him.
Cigarettes.
And it was weird because he was in that Montreal outfit. And then Jacques Rougeau was a big part of that episode.
Who's the Mountie.
Right? Ended up being the Mountie. And it was like the Flying Rougeaus or whatever the hell they called themselves. He and his brother came to, and Jacques really good in the Dynamite Kid episode, but he shows up he leaves first for the WWF. And then Montreal's not going very well. So then Dino Bravo shows up. And Dino Bravo is basically the Hulk Hogan of
Canada.
Montreal. Yeah, of Canada. And so they bring him in there. He had like kind of a forgettable run though.
He was like a nobody.
I remember him as Dino Bravo. And so he had like a mini run in WWF and then he fucking died.
Someone assassinated him
in
his
mob
home.
Related. Yeah, in his house. And it's like, so like they're both kind of unsolved.
Yeah.
It's just very weird. And then the Gorgeous Gino episode, that's the whole thing where like they were convinced it was a certain guy that was like really big up.
Who gave his eulogy. He was like
But then, no, was it that guy or was it the guy that was like in prison? Then he came out and then he's like, I'm telling you, it wasn't me. And then they're like, all right, maybe it wasn't you. And then they were like talking to his family.
Yeah, it was the guy who did the eulogy. And they're like, do you know who that guy is? And then he went to jail and they interviewed him in jail.
Right.
And he's like, what are you talking about? I was like, I gave the eulogy to his wedding. It wasn't me.
So weird. So weird.
Yeah.
So episode 6, the final episode of season 1 is the Fabulous Moolah, which we knew Moolah because they brought her back for a run in the late 90s and Mae Young.
Mae Young. Yep.
But what you don't realize about Fabulous Moolah is she probably, everybody like gives her all these like accolades, like, oh, it's great for women's wrestling. Probably set women's wrestling back about 50 years.
Because she wouldn't lose to anybody. And there's that whole story with I forget the woman's name.
Wendy Richter. Which was the original screw job.
Yes.
They basically Montreal screw jobbed Wendy Richter, and women's wrestling in like let's say the 80s would have been so much further down the road if it wasn't for Moolah. And then there's the whole thing about her and her husband, and then maybe like
sweet Georgia Brown,
all
that stuff.
It's a horrible, she comes
story.
off horribly to the point where a couple of years ago they gave out they were going to give out an award called the Fabulous Moolah Battle Royal for the women's Battle Royal at the WrestleMania. And there was so much backlash because a lot of this information came out that they changed the name of it to the Mae Young.
So the one thing we talked about before we got started is like there was a woman who I forget her name, but basically Moolah basically told her she broke her neck.
Oh yeah,
and then she's like, "You got to go with this guy." I might be getting it reversed, but she's like, "You got to go out with this guy. He's a promoter." And if you do what he tells you to, do,
oh, she sent him to like some place just for this trip, and she's yeah.
And
be really nice to this guy.
So that woman basically insinuating that like you got to sleep with this guy, and if you sleep with this guy, he'll put you over.
Right.
He'll put you over, as they say.
Yeah.
She doesn't do it, and then at the end of the episode, the same woman's like, "You can't shit on Moolah, because if you shit on Moolah, you're calling me a prostitute. And it was like, hold up. Like, you were the one who just told us that story. Like, that doesn't make any sense.
And I'm not even calling you a prostitute. Like, we're just like, you weren't trying. You're like, we're calling Moolah. Like, Moolah was just so bad.
Right. And so the other thing that
I also like the Wendy Richter line when she was like, my dad always said, like, Moolah, you couldn't put Moolah's face on the can of dog food or whatever, like to sell dog food or whatever. Like, just I'm like, oh.
But the woman I was talking about before, and I forget her name, she basically said, like, you can think she's an asshole, but you can't deny like what she did for like, fine. Here's the one thing I did have a problem with in that episode. Fucking that nerd Jim Cornette. He keeps talking about like the gold standard of women's wrestling today being Ronda Rousey.
No way.
And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like,
no, it's not.
Like Asuka and like
Becky Lynch. Asuka, Becky Lynch, Charlotte Flair, Bayley, Sasha Banks.
Yeah, like
it's not Ronda Rousey. Ronda Rousey had like a hot like month.
Not only that, but like she had a name for herself before she even wrestled. It wasn't like she was she's not a wrestler.
He's out of his mind. And you got to go to probably like Lita, Trish Stratus, and
Stacy Keibler,
maybe Keibler.
Who what's her name?
Oh, China,
and she's on best-selling Playboy of all time.
Well, no,
married a wrestler.
Sunny.
No,
China.
No, it was
Sable.
Sable.
Yeah, but that's not. She didn't wrestle. I mean, she did, but
she did.
But like legit wrestling, it's the 4 horsewomen of wrestling. It's Charlotte, Sasha, Bayley, Becky.
Yep.
They're Ronda Rousey.
Fucking Cornette, nerd.
All right, episode season 2. That's the 2-parter right out of the shoot about Chris Benoit, which I know you said you didn't want to watch.
I watched it,
but you watched it.
And one of the things I found really interesting, I didn't know, and I knew the story. It was one of those things where I'm like, this is really not about the actual case that I really want to know more about.
I understand.
But his relationship with Eddie Guerrero was like, to me, was the most important part of that episode.
I agree.
And how those two incidents, the death of Eddie Guerrero and the death of Chris Benoit and his family, were related.
Yeah,
kind of.
Chris Jericho tells the story about how at Eddie Guerrero's funeral, Chris Benoit cried so hard into his shoulder that it went the tears went through his jacket onto his like shoulder, like into his skin. And so that's definitely a part. And obviously nobody's trying to come up with like reasons for Benoit, but you do find out just how close he was with Guerrero and how that just shattered him. But in this episode, they talked to Benoit's son from a previous marriage, not with Nancy, and Nancy's sister.
Yep.
And they're both really good. In fact, Jericho's the one that brings those two together, and they're able to kind of reunite. But yeah, it's definitely a story that we kind of knew about, but the Guerrero part is something. And I also think it's good for, I don't know, like for Nancy, because everybody's like, oh, Benoit, you can't talk about Benoit. But then it's like, well, what about Nancy? What about his son that was killed? Like, at least this is sort of like a telling of that story. You're remembering them a little bit.
And I remember at the very beginning of the episode, Chris Jericho saying, and we've a lot of Jericho this episode, but he narrates most of these.
He narrates all of season 2 and 3.
Yeah, and he says in the beginning of the episode, if you think that I'm glorifying a murderer, stop listening now. He's like, that's not what I'm doing.
Right.
I'm talking about the person I knew in the experiences I had with him. That's it. Right. I'm not telling you that he's a great guy and that this shouldn't. And it was a way of explaining the story.
Yeah.
Without, they didn't give any new information, but like giving back a little bit more depth. Because when that first happened, that's all you heard was like Chris Benoit murdered his wife and son, hung himself.
Murder-suicide.
You didn't get anything else.
Nope.
You didn't hear about the Guerrero stuff. And like that to me was important. And the fact that he had basically no frontal lobe left in his head.
Oh, yeah. I mean, his move was the diving headbutt.
That's what I said to my wife. She's like, well, how bad was the CTE? I'm like, basically, the guy's finisher was a flying headbutt.
Right.
Like, how many times did he smack the front of his head?
Oh, it's just so bad.
Yeah.
And that's another one where, so he's probably the number one, like he's like Voldemort in the WWE.
Yeah.
Like they scrubbed all his matches from the network. Like you can't talk about him. That one I get. Like there are some other characters I'm like, how come this guy's not brought up more? But that one I at least get. However, when you get into the story about how nobody, like they asked, so Nancy was Benoit's wife who he murdered. They talked to his sister or her sister. Did anybody from WWE contact you? And she's like, no. She's like, Jericho and Chavo Guerrero reached out. She's like, she loves Jericho. and so do we. Friend of the podcast.
Friend of the podcast.
But Chavo Guerrero and Jericho, like they reached out, but like nobody else. Like so, the son, the sister, nothing. At the funeral, they sent Jim Ross. Nobody else went. No, like Vince, none of those guys went. And they sent Jim Ross, and Nancy's sister basically told him to fuck off and like take a hike. You know, like
poor JR. I feel like JR gets the shit end of that. Like,
he must. I mean, I don't know. He clearly got the short straw.
Like, we'd be like, well, you're gonna represent. I'm
us.
sure he wanted to go,
right? Oh yeah,
but it'd be like, wait, hold up, like I'm the only one going.
Great, absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
All right. So episode 3 of season 2 is the life and crimes of New Jack. This one is 100% the best one.
Unbelievable.
It's insane.
Unbelievable.
There's so many things to choose from. Let's start with the local one. So this was in Revere, Massachusetts, at like an ECW like house show. We probably have listeners that were there, or at least know somebody that was there.
Mm-hmm.
And he was supposed to fight in this tag team match or whatever. And then one of the guys, Axel Rotten, had to leave. So they brought in a local kid who goes by the name of Mass Transit, who said he was 21. And he actually had wrestled some little people, and that's how he got on Paul Heyman's radar. So Tiny the Terrible is in this episode. And he convinces them that he can wrestle. So he's going to just wrestle like the little people on the show. But then because of the departure, they're like, you know what? Let's get this guy in there. He's actually 17 years old.
He's 17 years old. And no, they didn't know that at the time.
He said he was 21. And back in the 90s, like, you
can't check.
Probably really check. You're like, all right, you're 21. We've seen you wrestle a little bit.
But the kid's dad was in the audience. The kid's dad drove him to the thing.
Yeah.
So, and Tiny the Terrible. Right. And then he wouldn't give him a ride home, which I thought was really funny. He's like, you're fucking give me a ride home.
So Mass Transit's tag team partners, Devon Dudley.
Yes.
And New Jack and Mustafa, the gangstas, who we'll get to. Fucking terrifying, these two guys. These guys are badasses. But so they tell Devon, like, we're just going to toss you out of the ring. Don't get back in. And so here's the thing, though. And so I don't know how you feel about it, but so Mass Transit originally shows up and he tells New Jack he wants to get some offense in.
Which is like, you don't.
Big no-no, apparently.
Don't do that. Yeah.
And then he also said he wants to get color, meaning like, go ahead and cut me. Like, I want to bleed a little bit. New Jack's like, I'll cut you. Well, he cut him with like a, what is that thing called?
A
syringe knife or like a
scalpel.
A scalpel. He took a scalpel and just started going to work on his head.
He like cut him to the bone.
He needed 50 stitches. He was bleeding out in the ring. And like the most queasy part to me is they're still hitting him with chairs and leg drops while he's bleeding out.
And his father is screaming. He's 17. He's 17. Like, that's on, if you're his father, like, that's on you, man.
Yeah.
Kind of, right?
You let him in a ring with New Jack. Like, you let him in an ECW ring.
And then what was the thing? Like, who was he? New Jack got hurt because he was going to like throw him off a ladder. And the guy like kind of like he's
so that was Vic Grimes.
He hesitated.
That was Vic Grimes. Yeah.
Vic Grimes. They both got hurt.
Yeah.
And so the next time, and I remember watching this on ECW, the scaffolding match.
Yeah.
When he fucking threw, and he barely.
Well, first of all, he shot him with a stun gun. He like tased him 3 times.
He said he didn't want to do it, so he hit him with a stun gun and then threw him off of the scaffold.
Yeah, Vic Grimes almost died,
and he hit the ropes.
Right.
Like he almost fucking landed on the floor. Yeah.
So Mass Transit survived that, but then unfortunately passed away like a few years later
from gastric bypass surgery.
Right.
Because he was a big dude.
So Mass Transit passed away. Vic Grimes should have died from that and didn't. Then he fights this guy, Gypsy Joe. So Gypsy Joe's gimmick is to like
he can't feel pain. And he's like 72 years old.
He was 1,000,000 years old, and he's like, I don't take bumps. Like I just like you can hit me, but like I can't act like I got. So New Jack just beat the shit out of this guy.
It's a 70-year-old guy.
Yep, just beat the absolute balls off of him.
And then
Hunter Red,
he literally stabbed a guy
with a knife
9 times. And they said, oh, he was pissed because in the news they said they stabbed him 7 times. Like, no, I stabbed him 9.
He said 16. The news said 16, and he was like, "No, it was 9 times. I counted." But what's the craziest part?
I didn't do it.
The crazy part about the Hunter Red match is he walks out there. There's like 9 people in the crowd.
Yes,
it's at a Ramada. There's nobody there, and Hunter Red apparently they were sitting down talking about what they're going to do in the match, And then Hunter Red like got up. He's like, all right, whatever. Like, I'll see you out there. And he's like, and Hunter Red like punched him in the face a couple times to start the match. And then New Jack had a knife on him.
Somehow got a knife,
pulled it out, stabbed him 9 times
in the back.
And then so New Jack's in jail because they call the cops on him. He gets arrested for assault. He's in jail, and Hunter Red shows up. That's the wrestling name. And he shows up and he's like, listen, I'll drop the charges if we go wrestle around. Like we start an angle and we wrestle around the thing. And New Jack goes, all right, you got to drop the charges first. And so he dropped the charges and New Jack fucking got out of there and bailed.
Ghosted him.
Never talked to him again.
And they're asking, oh, what happened with that? He's like, never talked to him again. Straight up.
How about some of New Jack's Smoky Mountain Wrestling promos where he's like congratulating OJ Simpson?
I was uncomfortable. I was visibly uncomfortable. I was by myself watching it. I was uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I was like, ugh.
Yeah, it was a tough watch.
Yeah.
But like, there's something about the over the top. And in season 3, there's an episode on Nick Gage, who is a deathmatch wrestler. Yeah. There's something about it where I'm like, I can't watch it, but then I watch it. Like, there's something about like New Jack, like all those ECW matches where you're like, are these guys in on it together or are they killing each other? Like, I don't know.
I don't know what's going on. Like, this doesn't look fun.
So that's the best one. The Brawl for All.
There's some good parts about that. And again, like,
yeah,
poor Bart Gunn. I'll just say that, like, so Bart Gunn wasn't supposed to win the Brawl for All, and he did.
Right. They were hoping Dr. Death Steve Williams would win.
And they kept Bradshaw. The whole thing started because Bradshaw was saying, like, well, I can kick anyone's ass in here. And they're like, okay, let's see.
It was a Vince Russo idea.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people hate Vince Russo. He did bring some good to the business, also a lot of bad.
Yeah.
Brawl for All was so dumb because it was during maybe the best time of wrestling, it was the worst idea. So it was like real fights, real boxing matches. And then at the end, rather than giving Bart Gunn like a run against Stone Cold,
which they said they were going to do
with Dr. Death.
Yeah.
They were like, all right, at WrestleMania, you can really fight Butterbean.
And I remember my dad, my dad was working for the WWF at the time. So we got all the pay-per-views like ahead of time, like on VHS. So I'm watching, I knew who Butterbean was. I love Butterbean. By the way, sneaky, people talk about this all the time. The best line in Jackass.
Is Butterbean okay?
Is Butterbean okay? Anyway,
so yeah.
Butterbean, if you haven't seen it,
he kills him.
Watch it. This shot that knocks out Bart Gunn that was thrown by Butterbean, it's an overhand right that hits him right on the jaw. And I looked at my dad. I was 16, 17.
Yeah, whatever it was, 98.
Yeah. I go, he's dead.
Yeah.
Like the life just went, it looked like someone took him by the toes and ripped his skeleton out of his body. And he just
so bad. It was so bad.
And that ended his career.
Well, nobody, like the whole point was like nobody got over. You also made everybody else that was wrestling during that time, like in that summer, look bad.
Yeah.
Because you're like, all right, these guys are fighting for real, meaning everybody else isn't.
Right.
You put all these guys that didn't really have like a thing going and you put them in real box matches, which none of them are boxers.
They look like you could tell immediately.
So I'm sure they're all tough dudes, but they don't, like, you put them in a boxing match, it wasn't going to work.
Sneaky, the best storyteller in this entire series, Godfather was great. He said he lost to Bart Gunn because he was high.
He was so high.
He was so high. He was high the whole time.
They did have a bunch of badass dudes in there, and like Bradshaw made the final, and Bart Gunn beat him, and then they're like, "All right, you're going up against Butterbean." Like,
Butterbean.
What the fuck was that?
And he's convinced that they did it to get back at him for winning.
Right, because the whole idea was Dr. Death, and they kept saying, and so Bart Gunn was even like, well, I can fight Dr. Death like in the final, or like whatever you want me to do, like I'll do it. And they're like, no, we're confident in Dr. Death, which he sucked, by the way. Was Dr. Death any good ever? No. Like nobody liked him.
He was old, like he had been around forever.
Yeah,
I'm like not gonna get him over.
I don't remember him being good ever.
Yeah.
Jimmy Snuka in the death of Nancy Argentino's episode 5.
Like I just
tough watch.
And the best part of this episode is they talk about Snuka turning himself in, but Vince is there. And they're in there for like hours.
Yeah.
And they come out, no charges. Like there's a whole meeting between the police of that town where they were in like Pennsylvania.
You're right.
And Vince is sitting there with Jimmy Snuka. No lawyers. Just Vince McMahon, Jimmy Snuka, and the police department. Nothing.
Yeah, that one's frustrating to watch because you know what happened.
You absolutely know what happened. Like the coroner's report, like, and the guy who did the
everything
when it came back around. Remember they did that whole thing. The article came back out. and there was like the new shit had come to light. And then even then, nothing. They said then they, Bill Cosby'd him and said like, oh, he was,
right, because he like showed up to court.
He showed up
like
to court and he was a mess. And they said like, oh, he can't physically stand trial.
Did you see there was an old Opie and Anthony interview with Jimmy Snuka? Where it was Opie and Anthony and Jim Norton with Jimmy Snuka, and they're like asking him about this.
Yeah.
And then fucking Opie was like, so whatever happened to the girl? It's so bad. They're like, Opie, she died. Because they're like trying to get Jimmy Snuka probably to like say something about it, or like to say something.
Yeah.
But like it's just so awkward. But it's on YouTube. You can watch that.
Yeah.
The next episode is Dino Bravo, which we mentioned.
Yep.
Episode 7 is David Schultz and the slap heard around the world. So this one's crazy to me. So this is in the 80s, and Dave Schultz is a good villain. Like he's got the crazy blonde curly hair. He's like a peer with Hulk Hogan, like at this time. And he did an interview because John Stossel is this guy for, was it 60 Minutes or 2020 or one of these guys. He shows up and he's like, oh, wrestling is fake. And I'm going to expose wrestling is fake. He's like, I was a high school wrestler and this isn't wrestling. Like the guy's in this episode too. And he's just the pits.
He's the worst. And he's like that gotcha guy. But like, I learned this. Remember the wrestling company came to school.
St. Paul's.
It was crazy.
Yeah.
Like they gave us money and like let us book our own weekend entertainment. And we booked this like gnarly.
Oh, they were great.
Independent. They were awesome, but they taught us like how to wrestle and like how to throw a punch.
Mm-hmm.
I will tell you this from firsthand experience. Wrestling is not fake. It's scripted.
It's not fake.
It's not fake.
Yeah, no, and I'm with those guys that get pissed off about that. They're like, oh, it's fake. How can I watch it? You're like, all right, well, you know who they know who's gonna win, but it doesn't mean guys aren't getting hit in the face with chairs or tossed out of the ring. Like, how do you fake that?
So
jump out of the ring.
Yeah, so that's the impetus of the whole thing.
And so this John Stossel though is right, and like especially in today's world, it would just seem so pathetic. But back in the 80s, he was like trying to prove that like wrestling. He's like, I can't believe they're taking all these people, like thinking that it's real, and like whatever. So they get him there, and then he was going to interview different people, and then they were like, all right, let's have him talk to Dave Schultz, who it's like a common phrase you'll hear is like protect the business.
Yes.
So he interviews,
and they
Dave
send
Schultz
him out specifically to do that.
And everybody was like, but even a few guys were like, maybe not the best idea to have Schultz.
Don't send Schultz. Yeah.
But so he's talking to him, and Stossel's just like, so like, is it like, I think it's fake, or like whatever, it's fake. And he fucking boxes his ears, just slap, like open hand slap to the ear, like twice, drops him. Stossel drops like a sack of potatoes.
Like if you've ever seen, this is a terrible thing to say, but if you've ever seen like a father, like slap their kid,
that's what it was.
And the kid just like looks down at the ground, like doesn't say anything, but just like, so he gets up and he's just like a little kid who just got slapped by his dad.
Yeah.
And then Schultz hits him again the other ear.
Oh, box them both. Guy probably can't hear all that great.
And then he ran away. Like I'm not like,
right.
But like that's like you're gonna big dick someone and then get your ears boxed and then you scamper away like a little twit.
Just
like, out of
just
here.
Took off. So Schultz. But here's the thing: is like, so by the time I started watching wrestling, I didn't even know anything about Dave Schultz. But I really believe, had that not happened, he might have been one of the big villains of the late '80s, early '90s. Like he might have been in that air, like that Roddy Piper type realm.
Like I said, he looks. If you haven't seen that episode, he looks like Psycho Sid.
Yes,
but who can do a promo? Because wasn't Sid Vicious like famously
not.
couldn't do it? But like, if he could do,
Schultz
promos,
can talk.
Yes, and he was real. Remember, he did that whole thing. He tells a story about there was this promo he was cutting. He was an actor. There was like his wife and kid, and he's like bossing the wife around and like yelling at the kid, and people called like DSS on him.
Oh yeah, and then they're like, "That's not even my wife,
not my kid." Yeah,
that's why they're both actors.
Yeah, and it was so good that they thought it was real.
I really like that was my big takeaway. Is like this is one of the absolute lost stars of the late 80s, early 90s. This guy, because they got rid of him and then he was done. Like that ruined his career. He got sued. Stossel, I think, sued him and the WWF or whatever it was.
Then he starts telling these stories about when his wrestling career ended, he became a world-renowned like a bounty hunter.
He's actually like Dog the Bounty Hunter.
He's Dog
like
the Bounty Hunter, like the real deal.
Yeah.
And he tells these stories. I'm like, in the last 20 minutes of the episode, I'm like, why don't we get more of that?
I know.
Like, I want to hear more of those stories.
He should have his own show. He should have like a weekly show.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Dave Schultz and the slap heard around the world. That's definitely one that you got to watch. Episode 8, Cocaine and Cowboy Boots, the Herb Abrams story, is the story of the UWF.
So think of Jonah Hill.
Yep.
And this guy did tons of cocaine, and he was fascinated by wrestling, and just decided one day that he's going to start his own wrestling company.
Yep.
And he has people like Cactus Jack, like Mick Foley.
He's got real
and
people.
Terry Funk. Like he has like these real people.
Did he have Greg the Hammer Valentine? I think he had
did.
like a handful of like real
people,
real wrestlers.
And he kept talking about how they were going to MGM. MGM Grand had just opened up, and they were going to do this big pay-per-view, and like 500 people showed up.
Yeah.
Like there was nobody there. And like Mick Foley's like, we're trying to do this spot like in the crowd, and there's no crowd.
There's no crowd.
And he's like, and like his checks would bounce, but like how he dies.
Right. Oh, it's insane.
Is one of the craziest stories I've ever heard.
Yeah.
He's naked.
Mm-hmm.
So he had a big thing with prostitutes and cocaine.
Loved the two of them together.
And he loved cowboy
equally.
boots.
And he wore cowboy boots all the time.
And he wouldn't take them off, even during nasty time.
During intercourse. And I believe was he like 5'2"?
5'2",
He's
little fat guy, ugly.
And he would like, I assume hopped up on Goofballs. He would cut these promos in the ring, like to promote the product, because like he wanted to be the Vince McMahon of this company. Like that's what he was trying to do. So like Vince McMahon did everything at that point. Like he'd be the color commentator, or the play-by-play guy. He'd be the in-ring guy, announcing stuff. He was running the whole show, and he would just be off his ass, just screaming about stuff.
And so there was how he died.
Yeah,
they say is he was running. He was all coked up. Now, picture Jonah Hill's character from The Wolf of Wall Street.
Yes.
That's him.
Yep.
So he's running. He's chasing prostitutes around his house with a baseball bat. And one of them does that thing where she runs out of a door and closes the door quickly behind her. He runs into the door, has a heart attack, and dies. And wasn't he like covered in like Vaseline? He was like slippery.
He was naked,
like lubricant,
covered in Vaseline and cocaine.
Yeah. And so he hits the door, falls back, dies.
Yeah.
That
insane.
Needs to be a movie.
And he was only 41.
And then there's people saying like he faked his death.
Oh, then there's all kinds of theories about him. But what was interesting about him is for somebody that didn't always have money, because that like Paul Heyman got accused of that too in ECW, like not always being able to pay it. Every guy that they got to talk about Herb Abrams and the UWF loved him.
Yeah, and they said, but wasn't
everybody
there a time
loved him?
Like he was bouncing checks, but he had another bank account that had like $10 million in it.
Yeah, it's really weird.
It was
a weird
super
story.
weird. It was so weird. But like this would be an amazing. I said there should be 3 endings.
Oh, and then
like Clue.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and depending on when you see
really
it, like how he really died.
It's great. Like that's a really, and that's another one where I didn't know much about it. And it's crazy because that ran from like 90 to 96. And so I'm like, God, I was a wrestling fan then. I had no idea about the UWF. No idea.
And it was just before Mick Foley signed with the WWF. So he was like, he was Cactus Jack at the time. He was doing all his Japan stuff. And then he came to UWF.
UWF.
Yeah. I almost said UHF. That's a different thing.
Then the last two in season 2 are the last ride of the Road Warriors,
which was my least favorite episode.
It's kind of like unnecessary, like Hawk and Animal. Like, all right, we know that they go around from territory to territory. They were a badass group. They would actually kind of fight guys sort of in the ring a little bit. And Hawk was nuts. Pick of the pod. Animal's a big part of this episode. You find out the one thing is it's got Minnesota, a bit of a hotbed of wrestlers. A lot of guys from Minnesota.
Large people in Minnesota.
Big fellas. And then season 2 ends with the Owen Hart tragedy. And his wife comes across as a very impressive person.
And his son.
And his son as well.
They're both very, I mean.
His wife, though, did every bit of research and like everything about his final days there. And again, what a waste. Like they put him in like as the Blue Blazer. Like Owen Hart was one of the best wrestlers at that time. And he somehow still was with the business after what they did to Brett. And then they put him in this Blue Blazer gimmick and they're like, let's have him come out of the sky. Like that's one of those things to me, like risk reward, like, oh cool, a character's coming in from the sky versus like,
and it was necessary? Like a whole thing. Remember they had him harnessed one way and they're like, it took too long to get you out of the harness. So let's do it this like cheapo way. And that's how he died.
Yeah.
It broke me when they were like, someone was telling the story and like when he fell, his last words were look out. So even if as he was dying, he was trying to warn people below him to like no one get hurt.
And they continued the card.
They finished them.
They wrestled after that. And so Jeff Jarrett was like one of the next matches. And Jarrett's like a lifelong friend, or not lifelong, but like a longtime friend of Owen Hart, and had to like do a promo and a match. JR and Jerry Lawler have to tell the audience that Owen Hart's died and like come into the ring next.
And here's Jeff Jarrett.
Double J.
Like, what the fuck? Like,
I don't know.
And
That's
again, I mean,
insane.
this is the thing that, like, I don't want to say that Vince McMahon is a heartless piece of shit, but he kind of comes off that way.
Wait, who?
Like, Vince McMahon.
Oh, yeah. And a lot of these he does. And I think,
like, how much money does that dude need?
I know.
You know what I mean?
It's nuts. But what's also crazy is, so I believe Owen Hart's wife is still like keeping him out of the Hall of Fame.
And she said, which I get it.
Good for her. Yeah, I whatever she wants to do after all this, I completely get. I'm on board. So it's funny how they kind of bookend season 2. I thought like Benoit and Owen Hart were going to be the two toughest ones to watch, and they were. But I thought the people that were interviewed in it were pretty impressive. So those are the 16 episodes, 15 subjects. Real quick, season 3 so far, they did a 2-parter on Brian Pillman. Really good. They did Nick Gage, that deathmatch wrestler I told you guys about. He's the one who fought David Arquette. Remember that made news and he like stabbed David Arquette and David Arquette almost died?
Yeah.
That was that one. Collision in Korea, which in the 90s, they took a bunch of wrestlers from WCW over to North Korea to wrestle. That's a wild episode. They have an Ultimate Warrior one. Grizzly Smith, definitely the hardest one to watch. Grizzly Smith was the father of Jake Roberts, Sam Houston, Rockin' Robin, and was just a child molester and a monster.
Just a monster person.
And then the Dynamite Kid was the 7th episode, which was really, really good. One of the best ones. They have, I think, 7 more, including the Plane Ride from Hell, which is a story that has been told on podcasts.
I've heard that story. Yeah.
Yep. Luna Vachon, let me get one. Chris Canyon, United States versus McMahon. So that, I assume that's about steroids. Yeah, that one's about steroids. And then they have a few others in there as well. So, but Ryan, before we get out of here, you have a great idea, a great question. Which wrestler or storyline have they not touched on yet? And by the way, not a dark side, but they did a 2-hour episode on China. If you could find that, watch it. It was really, really good. The China episode is great. Not technically dark side, but it's on Vice, same people. So outside of China, people they haven't done yet, who do you want them to do?
I would love them to do Jeff Hardy, which I think would be a really good episode.
Even Hardy, like the Hardy Boys, in like the early days when they fought in like their like backyard. That's a good one.
And because those guys were nuts, and the inspiration for the Party Boys.
Correct.
By the way.
Yep.
Speaking of that, I was always fascinated with the Dudley Boys. I want to learn more about that, how that thing came to be.
That's good.
Those guys are psychos. And there was one other one. Who would you want?
So I wonder, like ECW, there's already been an ECW documentary, which was pretty good, but like either characters in ECW or I'm trying to think who you'd want to highlight from there.
Sandman. Because we didn't bring it up, but in New Jack's episode, Sandman in an interview is electric.
Sandman was great. Yeah, he came across really, really good.
And he has, not to give it away, but he has like the Delco fridge. It was not Delco, it's somewhere else, but he has like that accent.
It's close. Or maybe it's just straight Philly.
It's straight Philly accent. And it was like, he goes in there and, fucking New Jack. And he's just like, he's a maniac. That was a pretty good Sandman, by the way.
That was a good Sandman. Yeah. I'll give you that. That was a good Sandman.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Probably people from that era. Probably
Sabu.
Sabu. Your guy Rob Van Dam. Tommy Dreamer. I'm trying to think who else. I'm glad they did Dynamite Kid because the big takeaway with Dynamite Kid is there was a lot of kind of shitheads from the 80s, 90s, but they still like romanticize some of them, and then they like ignore others. And you're like, how do they pick and choose that?
It's
Oh, actually, Raven. Speaking of ECW and then WCW, Raven was the man.
Yeah.
I would like a Raven episode.
How about a Bam Bam Bigelow?
Pick of the pod.
Pick of the pod.
Speaking of.
Mm-hmm.
Pick of the pod.
Pick of the pod.
Pick of the pod.
Pick of the pod.
Doink the Clown. What about Doink the Clown?
What about Doink Dink
Matt
Wink and Pink and
Bourne
Stink?
was the good Doink the Clown. Oh, Dink Wink and Pink. When they fought Jerry Lawler and his crew. We could do that. Yeah, we could just do a whole Dead Wrestlers episode if you want.
We could do Dead Wrestlers.
Ryan, would you like to kick, receive, defer, or you may also choose to defend a goal?
Well, we know one, so I will defer to you, but we already know one. Fear Street, watch Fear Street.
Watch Fear Street.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't put this in the This Week in Dork, but No Sudden Move, the Steven Soderbergh movie, which came out on HBO Max, starring Don Cheadle and Benicio del Toro. I think it's the best movie of the year. I think it might be the best movie of the year
told you.
so far. So go ahead and watch it.
I was starting to watch it. I had a fun day in the sun.
Oh, too much vitamin D, though, can be an absolute kick in the nuts.
Well, you can read into that. I was not in my right mind. And I was watching this movie kind of with one eye closed. And I'm like,
no, don't do that.
No. And I'm like,
watch again. Great cast, great story.
Yeah, I stopped watching a half hour in because I'm like, I'm not really paying as much of attention to this as I should.
So here's the weird balance I'm in, because I think I gave Mitchell's versus Machines a 6 out of 6. And I'm not sure No Sudden Move is a 6 out of 6, but at the same time,
it's not an animated movie.
That's a good point.
It's the best big boy movie you've seen this year.
Yeah, because I love Judas and the Black Messiah. That was forever ago, but that was still this year. And so I think No Sudden Move might be the best. Now this week we have Black Widow, so we'll see. Maybe that'll top it.
So they have Don Cheadle and Benicio del Toro in the thing, but then I'm watching the opening credits. This is where I was like, every name that comes up, I'm like, oh shit.
Brendan Fraser.
By the way, Brendan Fraser looks horrible. So I looked it up.
I talked about this on the air, and somebody tried it, but I still don't know.
So his next movie
called
The Whale.
The Whale.
And it's about a 600-pound guy. And it's Darren Aronofsky. So you know how that guy's a psycho.
Let me just jump in here real quick.
Okay, please do.
If you're going to be in a movie and you're going to be playing a 600-pound man, for example, I'm 200 pounds, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, hey, I got to build up for this role. I could probably get to 300 pounds without like killing myself.
Yeah.
The rest is going to have to be prosthetic or CGI. Or
I don't think he's actually going to be 600 pounds.
I know, but like, what's the point of being like that? Like he looks like
he's 300 pounds. He's absolutely 300 pounds in this movie. Yeah.
He doesn't have, so like, see how most people's faces go from face, then it kind of goes in, and then there's neck, and then there's like body. His is just like from here to there.
He looks like a thumb.
Yep. That's it. So it's kind of jarring.
He turned. So the first scene you see him, he's in a car and he turns to talk to John Cheadle. I had no idea it was him. I was like, holy shit, is that Brendan Fraser?
Yeah, because we were ripping him, and then somebody texted in. They were like, well, he's in a movie where he's a 600-pound guy. I'm like, well, he's still not 600 pounds. So what's the point? But anyway, so he's in that, I guess. But John Hamm
is in it. David Harbour.
Kieran Culkin.
Julia Fox.
Yeah. No spoiler, some other big name that you may
I haven't watched it yet.
Know yet. So I'm gonna leave that there. But that's pretty good. So what do you got?
I watched a documentary on Hulu just today.
It's fresh.
Called The Donut King. I did not know.
Is it about me, Ryan?
No, but there's a guy on the West Coast who is a refugee from Cambodia during the whole Pol Pot thing. So he comes over. He's a refugee from Cambodia. He started buying up all the independent donut shops in the West Coast. He was the reason that you couldn't until recently find a Dunkin' Donuts on the West Coast.
Interesting.
Dunks try
they're there
donuts.
Now.
They're
donuts, as I would call them, but they've actually just
so he was so embedded. Like he sponsored 100 families from Cambodia to come over. All of them opened donut shops. They watched what he did. So all of these independent donut shops. There was a time in the 80s where Dunkin' tried to get into the California market and then bailed because of him.
Wow.
And I had no idea who this guy was.
King.
So it's actually, and his story is fascinating. So if you,
I like it very much.
It's a little bit of history. If you don't know the history of the country of Cambodia, it's actually very, very eye-opening.
I love it. Well, that is gonna do it for this episode.
What a whopper of an episode, huh?
It's a longer episode than we're accustomed to. So
we were flying though. I didn't feel like it.
No, it didn't. And I bet you can think so at home as well, or in your car, or wherever you happen to be listening to or watching this. You can watch us on YouTube, listen to us on the old podcast, follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Dork Podcast. Live show coming out August 15th. Be there at Idle Hands. We're going to start around 3:00. It's a Sunday. Bring something. We can tell you if you should have bought it or not. And next week we will do Black Widow. How's that?
How about that? Oh, like a real episode.
MCU's back.